farmers in Austria used to sprinkle it on bread and add it to drinks. It stimulated hemoglobin formation, made it easier to breathe at high altitudes, and, according to them, prolonged life and protected them from infectious diseases. Women also favored it to give their skin a peaches and cream complexion. They thought it was some kind of a health booster. But actually, we're talking about a potent poison. Austrian peasants consumed a dose that would initially kill an unprepared person. What was the secret to their survival? There are countless poisons in the world, used for hunting, self-defense, medical purposes, and murders. One must have extensive knowledge in chemistry and biology to apply poisons correctly. Today, we'll look at some of the deadliest poisons, causing terrifying consequences. Stay tuned. We're about to discuss a substance that can literally destroy everything. A drop of this toxin can kill everything there is. Just so you know, each like and subscription supports this video and lets YouTube's algorithms know that it's worth watching. Batrachotoxin. In 2015, 19 inmates of New York's Rikers Island prison complained of finding something like blue and green pellets in their meatloaf. You'd probably be alarmed too if you found such things in your meal, right? The inmates felt unwell and were certain that they had been poisoned by some chemical. A sample was analyzed, and they found Batrachotoxin. But more on that later. Another report mentions a woman who deliberately ate 1.2 kilograms, 3.3 pounds, of rat bait. It contained a total of 75 milligrams of the same substance. After standard treatment, she fully recovered. Yet another case involved a 17-year-old young man who was hospitalized with a severe blood coagulation disorder. It turned out that he had been smoking a mixture of marijuana and the aforementioned chemical. Like in other similar cases, he was treated with vitamin K, but symptoms persisted for several months. All these cases have one thing in common: the anticoagulant Batrachotoxin. This substance was developed in the United Kingdom in 1977 to combat rats. Now, this rodenticide is used against mice and even larger pests like possums. Batrachotoxin is unique for two reasons. First, it's a highly palatable bait for rodents. Second, it's lethal to them even when ingested just once. The authorities of the British island of South Georgia utilized these characteristics. The island had become overrun with a huge number of Norwegian rats, Rattus norvegicus. How did they get there? In the 18th century, Captain James Cook landed there, along with hordes of Rattus norvegicus. There were no predators on the island, but birds were highly abundant. As a result, the rats thrived, feeding on chicks and bird eggs. Since there were no trees on the island, birds built their nests in grass and burrows that could be easily reached by rats. In the latter half of the 19th and early 20th centuries, Norwegian whalers flocked to South Georgia for whale and seal oil, which was used for candles and lamps. And who did they bring with them? You've guessed it, rats and mice. With the advent of electricity, the whalers forgot about South Georgia, but the rodents didn't. The local bird population suffered, decreasing by 90% compared to Cook's time. In the 21st century, the government of South Georgia resorted to an unexpected plan. They hired helicopters to drop Batrachotoxin rodenticide over every square meter of the island, an area of over 4,000 square kilometers, or 1,540 square miles. The effort continued for several years, resulting in the complete eradication of rats. However, in 2016, they found footprints of one rat. The entire area was repoisoned, and no more tracks have been found since. The authorities managed to do the impossible, and birds once again began repopulating the island. When it enters the bloodstream, Batrachotoxin reduces the amount of vitamin K. This vitamin is crucial for blood clotting, so its depletion leads to internal bleeding. In rodents, this results in shock, loss of consciousness, and ultimately, death. In humans, symptoms include weakness, headaches, nausea, coughing up blood, pain, and subcutaneous hemorrhages. The primary antidote is the immediate administration of vitamin K. It's highly effective if poisoning is detected before severe bleeding occurs. Potassium cyanide. At first glance, this substance resembles ordinary granulated sugar, but don't be fooled. In reality, it's an extremely potent poison. No, it's not yet the most toxic substance in the world that we promised to discuss, but it's still very dangerous. Theoretical physicist Robert Oppenheimer, a protagonist of the 2023 movie Oppenheimer, tried to use this substance to poison his professor with it. We're sure you've never felt such strong animosity towards any of your teachers to even consider such a thing. Ultimately, Oppenheimer's plan didn't come to fruition, and whether this incident actually happened in history is unknown. In fact, this poison was a favorite among killers in the past. In the early 20th century, you could easily buy this powder in a pharmacy. It has an almond smell and taste and acts instantly. But you'll never look at almonds the same way again. Distinguishing this poison in the almond pastries of Grigory Rasputin, a friend of the Russian Emperor Nicholas II's family, was impossible. The infamous Russian mystic was targeted by a group of conspirators who attempted to poison him. But this didn't come to pass. You might be wondering, why cyanides? Cyanides have been used since ancient times. For example, the ancient Egyptians derived a deadly essence from peach pits. In 2013, 81 elephants died from potassium cyanide poisoning in Zimbabwe's Hwange National Park. Poachers had poisoned the animals' drinking water with the toxin. This incident became the most massive instance of elephant poaching in the country's history. In addition to the elephants, several smaller animals and predators that hunted them also died. Some speculate that there was no poison at all. However, another theory suggests that the conspirators unknowingly neutralized the poison with sweetness. The secret is finally out. We're talking about potassium cyanide. Sugars, mainly glucose, are used among its antidotes. By the way, the wine served to Rasputin also contains some glucose. If poisoning does occur, the victim will experience a burning sensation in the throat, stiffness, and loss of sensation in the palate and tongue, among many other unpleasant symptoms. A lethal dose for a human is approximately 1.7 milligrams per kilogram. The body simply succumbs to intracellular oxygen starvation. If one ingests a gram of this substance, death will occur within a minute. Potassium cyanide was first synthesized by Swedish apothecary Carl Wilhelm Scheele in the 18th century. It also occurs naturally. One can be poisoned by consuming a large amount of seeds from apricots, peaches, cherries, and plums. A daily norm doesn't usually exceed 20 grams for an adult. When these seeds reach the stomach, they produce hydrocyanic acid, from which cyanides are derived. Therefore, it's best to be cautious. Tetrodotoxin. This substance is considered to be 1,200 times more toxic than cyanide. It's called tetrodotoxin, and it's found in high concentrations in fish from the Tetraodontiformes order, particularly the notorious pufferfish. The toxin is present in its liver, ovaries, and roe. Additionally, many bacteria are capable of producing tetrodotoxin. The toxin was discovered by Japanese scientist Yoshizumi Tahara at the beginning of the 20th century, who also managed to crystallize it. The first recorded case of poisoning by this toxin was documented in 1774 by Captain James Cook. He and two of his companions sampled the liver and roe of a local tropical fish, a species of pufferfish in New Caledonia, while the innards were fed to a pig. Imagine this. By 3 a.m., they experienced intense numbness and weakness, only feeling better after taking medications, including an emetic. The pig, having eaten the remains of the fish with most of the toxin, died. Other symptoms of tetrodotoxin poisoning include difficulty breathing and convulsions. A mere 1 to 2 milligrams of this substance is enough for a lethal outcome. Of course, the amount of toxin in the fish varies depending on the species, but in some cases, a single individual can kill 30 to 40 people. Yes, we're talking about the great and fearsome fugu, and the fact that people spend years learning how to cook it. A lot of tetrodotoxin poisoning cases have been featured in well-known movies, such as Law-Abiding Citizen, Captain America, The Winter Soldier, Kill Bill 2, and TV series like The X-Files, Bones, and Grimm. What makes things worse is that there is no antidote to this toxin, so it's probably best to steer clear of fugu just in case. Dioxin. The next substance was the cause of mass poisonings. On July 11, 1976, thousands of residents in the Italian town of Seveso began suffering from nausea and vision problems. Within 3 to 4 days, hospitals were overwhelmed, including children. Children exhibited rashes, abscesses, back pain, weakness, and dull headaches. These symptoms were accompanied by horrific stories about animals and birds dying in their yards. On that fateful day, an explosion occurred at a chemical plant owned by a Swiss company. A cloud of dioxin was released into the air. Dioxin is one of the most toxic compounds on Earth. In the years following the accident, there was a significant increase in congenital anomalies among newborns in the area around the factory. Dioxins are persistent environmental pollutants. They are formed as a result of industrial processes, but can also occur naturally during forest fires and volcanic eruptions. In terms of their impact on humans, dioxins suppress the immune system and intensely affect cell division processes. All this leads to the development of cancer, hormonal disorders, and metabolic disturbances. The result is a compromised immune system. 90% of toxins enter the body through food, primarily through meat, dairy products, fish, and shellfish. The remaining 10% enters through air and dust, which gets into the lungs and skin. These substances accumulate in fatty tissues and can even be passed to a fetus or child through the placenta and breast milk. There is no antidote for dioxin. Moreover, the half-life of dioxins in the human body ranges from 7 to 11 years. Once it enters the body, it stays for a long time. Amanita, death cap. The next poison is found in certain mushrooms that cunningly masquerade as chanterelles and button mushrooms, but in reality, it's the most common mushroom of the Amanita genus, the deadly Amanita Phalloides, or death cap. It contains a toxin known as amatoxin. 95% of mushroom-related deaths worldwide are due to mushrooms containing this poison. Besides Amanita Phalloides, amatoxin is also found in mushrooms of the Galerina and Lepiota genera. All of them are fatally dangerous. The first signs of acute amatoxin poisoning appear within 6 to 30 hours after consuming these deceptive mushrooms. Naturally, the severity of symptoms depends on the quantity consumed. Although this poison acts slowly, the onset of symptoms may come quite abruptly. They start with intense vomiting and stomach pain. The victim develops weakness and experiences disturbances in the water electrolyte balance. By the second or third day, the victim suffers from liver and kidney failure, which can easily lead to death. Interestingly, amatoxin is thermally stable, remaining toxic in both raw and cooked mushrooms. Amatoxin-containing mushrooms cause approximately 50 to 100 deaths annually in Europe alone. There is no specific antidote for amatoxin, although research in this area is ongoing. Treatment mainly involves supportive therapy. Strychnine has been used as an aphrodisiac, a beer additive, a remedy for paralysis, and an energy booster. An example of its use as an energy booster occurred on a hot August day in 1904 during the Olympic Marathon in Missouri. At the 22-kilometer mark, runner Thomas Hicks began to struggle. His coaches gave him the Red Bull of that era, 1 milligram of strychnine mixed with egg white. Moreover, they forbade him from drinking water. For his next dose, they mixed the strychnine with brandy. Had Hicks received a third dose as planned, he likely would have died. He won the race, narrowly escaping death. The strychnine caused facial muscle spasms, hallucinations, and he lost 3.5 kilograms, 7.7 pounds, during the race. Other consequences of poisoning by this toxin include convulsions and respiratory failure. In small doses, strychnine acts as a short-term stimulant. However, unlike caffeine, just 5 milligrams is enough to kill an adult. This poison is derived from the seeds of the strychnine tree, Strychnos nux vomica. It was first isolated in 1818 by Pierre-Joseph Pelletier and Joseph Bien-Aimé Caventou. In nature, the tree looks innocuous and can grow up to 12 meters, 39 feet, tall. Yet every part of it is poisonous, including any parasitic plants that grow on it. The plant produces the toxin from the amino acid tryptophan. This bitter-tasting molecule may deter predators. Strychnine is so toxic that it was used for years to get rid of rodents and birds. However, in 2006, the EU banned its use for killing moles. Strychnine is cautiously administered to humans as a stimulant. In cases of poisoning, emetics and chemical antidotes, mainly tannic acid, are prescribed. Therefore, such stimulants should never be used without a doctor's prescription. Ricin on a September day in 1978, BBC employee Georgy Markov was near a bus stop in London. He felt a slight jab with an umbrella. Along with it, a tiny sphere less than 2 millimeters in diameter entered his body. It was filled with ricin, an extremely toxic protein poison of plant origin. Markov developed a fever and died several days later. No, this wasn't a scene from a spy novel, but a real incident that happened during the Cold War. Indeed, a minuscule amount of this poison, the size of a tiny dot, can kill a person if inhaled, swallowed, or injected. An antidote is being developed, but for now, symptomatic treatment only reduces the likelihood of a fatal outcome. When ricin is injected, the muscles and lymph nodes around the site immediately die. This is typically followed by nausea, fever, coughing, internal bleeding, liver, spleen, and kidney failure. Death occurs due to circulatory system collapse. Treating ricin poisoning can be challenging after the onset of symptoms. Every year, around 1 million tons of castor beans are processed worldwide. Ricin is a byproduct of these beans, which are used in the production of castor oil. What if you swallowed a whole castor bean? Most likely, nothing would happen. The key is not to chew it, so it would just harmlessly pass through your body. Note that ricin's lethal potential exceeds that of cyanide. Despite these qualities, ricin has found medical applications. It is used to study cellular processes and could potentially be used in cancer therapy. VX. In March 1968, 6,250 sheep died simultaneously on the pastures of a reservation in Utah. Examination established that the cause of death was organophosphate compound poisoning. This incident coincided with open-air testing of the VX agent. VX is the most toxic of known chemical warfare agents. It is a clear, amber-colored oily liquid that is tasteless and odorless. Just 1 drop of this substance on your skin can kill a person within minutes. You might think this is the very poison that could destroy everything. Not quite, but we're getting close. So in 1968, a scandal broke out, drawing the attention of the international community. The base's leadership denied any involvement in the sheep incident, but compensated the farmers for their losses, including future ones, as no one wanted to buy their lamb. This incident is a stark illustration of how even the smallest amount of VX can cause massive losses. VX was created in 1955, initially developed as a pesticide. Its extreme toxicity prevented its use in agriculture. Consequently, VX began to be used as a chemical weapon. If a person inhales VX, they start coughing, have difficulty breathing, and experience vision problems, tearing, abdominal pain, nausea, and seizures. A large dose is a powerful assault on the entire nervous system, leading to convulsions. If contact with the poison has occurred, it's better to remove clothing, as traces of VX can remain on it for another half an hour. This is especially true if the toxin was dispersed as an aerosol or vapor. Atropine, pralidoxim, and diazepam are used as antidotes to VX. Mitotoxin. While VX is already surprisingly toxic, there exists a poison in nature more than 100,000 times more potent. Mitotoxin. It's produced by a type of plankton called Gambir discus toxicus. This poison was first isolated from fish that caused ciguatera poisoning in Tahiti. The fish is called mito, which lent its name to the poison. Just imagine, someone simply eats a fish, not even a fugu, and within 3 to 6 hours, they experience nausea, abdominal pain, tingling, itching, and blurred vision. Even stranger, cold objects feel hot, and hot objects feel cold. This condition can last for several days, or, in the worst cases, several months, or even years. But don't fear all tropical and subtropical fish. It all depends on whether they eat the dangerous plankton and on the species of the fish itself. Ciguatera most often affects those who consume barracudas, moray eels, sea bass, amberjack, parrotfish, surgeonfish, and red snapper. The molecular structure of mitotoxin is also intriguing. It consists of 32 rings, making it one of the largest and most complex non-protein, non-polysaccharide molecules. Attempts to synthesize it began almost 30 years ago, in 1996. Although the research continues, scientists have only been able to partially synthesize it. Mitotoxin is still obtained from living organisms. For example, scientists grew the plankton Gambir discus toxicus for a year to obtain it in its pure form. They ended up with 4,000 liters, 1,057 gallons of culture, which, after numerous stages of isolation and purification, resulted in a mere 5 milligrams of chemically pure mitotoxin. To put it in perspective, just 1.3 nanograms can kill a mouse. Research on this type of poison continues to this day. Batrachotoxin. Touching this frog even once can cost you your life, especially if you have a cut on your hand. We're talking about the tiny tree frogs of the genus Phalloides from the jungles of Western Colombia. They secrete poison from glands on their backs and behind their ears. Native Americans have used this toxin for centuries to poison their darts. In the 1960s, scientists discovered that the skin glands of the golden poison frog and the bicolored tree frog, Phylobates bicolor, contained batrachotoxin, a potent poison more toxic than tetrodotoxin in pufferfish. And remember, tetrodotoxin is already over 1,000 times more deadly than cyanide. A lethal dose for a human is about the amount of 2 large grains of table salt. One frog contains almost 20 such grains. What happens if this toxin enters the bloodstream? A person experiences arrhythmia followed by cardiac arrest. Interestingly, the amount of toxin in a frog caught and kept in laboratory conditions gradually decreases. This suggests that the toxin comes from their diet. Scientists believe the frogs obtain the poison by consuming beetles that contain batrachotoxins. But it's not just frogs and beetles that have this poison. In 1989, an American ornithologist studying in Papua New Guinea was freeing a pitahui bird from a net when it bit and scratched him, numbing his hand. Analysis of the bird's feathers showed the presence of batrachotoxin. Unlike the scientist, the people of New Guinea knew this bird was inedible. For the frogs, this poison serves as a great defense mechanism, protecting them from predators. There is no effective antidote for it. Sarin. Just 1 drop of this substance on the skin can cause sweating and muscular twitching. If the dose is larger, one might lose consciousness, experience seizures, or suffer from paralysis and respiratory failure. Meet sarin, a clear, tasteless, and odorless liquid that doubles as a man-made chemical warfare agent. Sarin is a nerve agent that can vaporize and disperse into the environment. In its liquid form, sarin boils at 151.5 degrees Celsius, 304.7 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're exposed to sarin, symptoms may manifest within a few seconds. But the worst part? It's odorless, so you might not even realize you've been poisoned. Symptoms include a runny nose, teary and painful eyes, constricted pupils, increased salivation, sweating, coughing, rapid breathing, intestinal issues, weakness, and drowsiness. If you start experiencing all or some of these symptoms, you might not just be sick, but poisoned. Sarin was developed in Germany in 1938, originally as a pesticide. However, it was used during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s and in 2 terrorist attacks in Japan in 1994 and 1995. Fortunately, there are antidotes for sarin, but they must be administered quickly. Mercury. What would you do for a beautiful hat? Remember the Mad Hatter character from Alice in Wonderland? Well, that expression, mad as a hatter, came from real-life hat makers. During the times of Lewis Carroll and even earlier, hat makers used mercury nitrate in the production of felt hats. This led to chronic poisoning among the craftsmen, resulting in hallucinations, seizures, and dementia. Today, people are primarily exposed to methylmercury by consuming fish and shellfish that contain it. Mercury accumulates in the ocean food chain, especially in predatory fish like tuna, swordfish, and sharks. Mercury is present in the Earth's crust and is released through volcanic activity, weathering of rocks, or human activity. Once in the environment, mercury can be transformed by bacteria into methylmercury, which in turn accumulates in fish. Cooking these seafood products doesn't destroy the mercury, and once it's in the human body, it can cause significant neurological damage. Up until the 1960s, mercury was actively applied in medicine. For centuries, mercury-containing products were believed to cure a wide variety of diseases. In fact, mercury-based treatments were once used to treat tuberculosis, scabies, and even cancer. Parents used to rub mercury powder on their children's gums to ease teething pain. However, due to its toxicity, mercury is now rarely used in medications. Mercury is still found in thermometers, and each thermometer contains up to 2 grams of mercury. Unithiol, DMSA, and other medications are used as antidotes in mercury poisoning cases. Arsenic. When you strike a hammer against a mineral containing arsenic, it will emit the smell of garlic. The same thing happens when arsenic is heated. This steel-colored semimetal with a greenish tint has been used since ancient times to assassinate rulers. It's believed to have been used to poison Alexander the Great, Napoleon Bonaparte, and Nero's stepbrother. In 17th century France, arsenic was so commonly used to poison wealthy relatives that it became known as poudre de succession, inheritance powder. Arsenic compounds are still used today, for example, in insecticides, wood treatment, glass making, and even in depilatory products. It's also added to certain alloys to improve their properties. Arsenic is released into the atmosphere from volcanoes and is present in groundwater in many countries. It's also produced as a result of human activities like mining, copper smelting, and emissions from coal power plants. Although there's no concrete evidence, it's believed that the German Dominican monk Albertus Magnus first isolated arsenic in 1250. Several centuries later, residents of an alpine region began consuming arsenic as a tonic. They sprinkled it on bread and added it to hot drinks, believing it gave strength and improved complexion. Interestingly, arsenic does help oxygenate the body, and gradually increasing the dosage can build resistance to the poison. Eventually, some men could consume 300 to 400 milligrams at a time with no harm. Long-term exposure to arsenic can lead to cancer and skin diseases. Symptoms of acute poisoning include vomiting, abdominal pain, intestinal problems, numbness, tingling in the limbs, and muscle cramps. In extreme cases, death may occur. As with mercury, the antidote for arsenic poisoning is unithiol. Botulinum toxin. Botox. Remember the substance that can kill everything. Patience. We're almost there. First, let's look at the most potent organic poison, botulinum toxin. This protein is produced by Clostridium botulinum bacteria in anaerobic conditions, like in improperly canned foods. It blocks nerve functions and can lead to respiratory and muscular paralysis. It's dangerous because it has no color, taste, or smell. Botulism affects not only humans, but also birds and horses, though it less frequently impacts cattle. Botulinum toxin is destroyed by boiling for 25 to 30 minutes. However, if someone consumes a contaminated product, symptoms may appear within 12 to 36 hours. These include fatigue, weakness, dizziness, blurred vision, dry mouth, and difficulty swallowing. If left untreated, the respiratory muscles and muscles of the lower body will also be affected, leading to paralysis. Immediate medical treatment is necessary, as the mortality rate for botulism is 5 to 10%. Interestingly, botulinum toxin is used in cosmetic treatments to reduce wrinkles. Yes, Botox is based on this deadly poison, which has a relaxing effect on facial muscles. As a result, the skin becomes smoother, reducing the number of wrinkles. This product has been used worldwide for decades to maintain beauty. Polonium. At last, we reach the substance that can kill everything. It's a substance 400 times more radioactive than uranium. During its decay, polonium generates a considerable amount of heat. Just 1 gram can heat up to 500 degrees Celsius, 932 degrees Fahrenheit. Annually, only about 100 grams of this toxin are produced worldwide, making it one of the rarest substances on Earth. This is polonium-210, a soft radioactive metal with a silver-white color. It was discovered in 1898 by Polish-French physicist Marie Curie, and she named it in honor of her homeland, Poland. Polonium-210 is rarely used by people, and it's extremely risky to handle. Just 7 trillionths of a gram of polonium-210 is enough to kill a person. So, what could 1 gram of this substance do? It has the potential to destroy an entire country. Since there is very little polonium in uranium ore, it is produced in a nuclear reactor from radioactive bismuth-210. Interestingly, lichens can absorb this element directly from the atmosphere. In some northern areas, people who eat deer, which eat lichens, have higher concentrations of polonium in their blood. By the way, polonium has been involved in several high-profile deaths. According to one theory, it was used to poison 75-year-old Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat in 2004. In 2006, former Russian secret agent Alexander Litvinenko died after receiving a lethal dose of polonium in a London hotel. Polonium may have also caused the deaths of several scientists. It was used in part because it's difficult to detect. Polonium also played a crucial role in the first Soviet atomic bomb. New technology had to be developed to use this element in the bomb's detonator. This required designing a complex system to protect materials in contact with polonium from its alpha radiation. You need to be extremely cautious when handling polonium, as there is no antidote. Given its simultaneous toxicity and radioactivity, polonium definitely comes at the top of today's ranking. At the end, the world is full of poisons. Humanity has learned to cope with some, but there are still those against which we remain powerless. Who knows if the planet will keep this secret until the end?